Okay, excellent. So just to start off with, let's have the core group here just say hello and say your name. You can introduce yourselves a little bit later when we go through the agenda. But I'm David Crean.
I'm Sandra Jensen.
I'm Lucy Martin.
I am Elisa Dalla Vedova.
I'm Dylan Burns.
And I'm Sarah Moody.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm just going to do a screen share and you will see, hopefully everybody, you'll see our main page, which has our 3 most important things that we feel are what Heartward is about. And we're going to have an attempt to follow the following agenda, which is that Sarah Moody will talk about our vision, and that includes the One Planet Living Action Plan. We will also have some indication of our story so far, and then Lucy Martin is going to speak about the regenerative ecologically regenerative nature of Heartward's project. And Elisa Dalla Vedova will follow up with what that could look like. Sandra will then address some of the socially positive aspects, what it could feel like. I will then speak about how we as a community, about governance, about how we as a community can make decisions, the decision-making process, and followed by Dylan Burns, who is going to speak about the financially sustainable aspect of this project. And Peter Burke from Co-Production Housing is very kindly coming in to speak about the land finding and some of the issues that we have met along the way. And then Elisa will come back and talk a little bit about what's next, and that is specifically about what are those next steps for you as interested people who would like to perhaps go further than just this meeting. And then we will have hopefully some space for a question and answer period. And in order to do the question and answer, we will ask you to scroll across your screen, and at the bottom you will see reactions, a little title that says reactions, and you can press the button that says raise my hand, and that will raise a little yellow hand in the top of your screen, and you will pop up and we will see, and then we can turn on your microphone and you can ask the question. Alternatively, you could write it in the chat and just make sure that it goes to all, or at least to Sarah Moody. Okay, so without further ado, I am going to hand over to Sarah Moody, and she is going to take it from here.
I am, yes. I'm aware that you might not be able to see me talk and share the screen at the same time, so I hope that doesn't feel too discombobulating.
I'm just going to stop the share for a moment, just so that
okay.
you can just for this part.
And I'm aware that, yes, you're all on mute and we're going to do a lot of talking tonight. So we have got the recording. We are following this meeting up with further meetings. So this is just like the start of a conversation. You're definitely going to have a lot of time and space to share from your side. But I think today is going to be quite a lot from our side. So I hope it doesn't feel too overwhelming. And you've probably read stuff on our website and know a bit about us. But I'm going to just take you through the vision as we sort of see it and as it has evolved over the last several years that we've been working together. We're a group of Sussex-based families, and we are aiming to create a community which values diversity, creativity, and integration within the neighbourhood within which we build. As you might have seen from that first photo, many of us have young children, and we want to create a healthy, happy environment for them to grow up in, We want to care for the land, and we want to design and build ecologically friendly homes and generate warm social ties. So our vision is to build a co-housing community of around 10 to 25 households. Don't know how many, it depends on the land we find. The community will be created and run by its residents. Everyone will have their own home, but we will share facilities and tools, and we will have a common house in which the community can share meals and use it for meeting and workspace, which we're going to talk more about later. For those of you who don't know much about co-housing, it originated in Denmark in the 1960s. I hope you can't hear the sound of my child crying off screen there. Sorry about that if you can. The movement is sort of really prevalent in Scandinavian countries, also Germany and the US, but there's only about 9 established co-housing communities in the UK. But this model of living, which balances privacy and a highly sociable network neighbourhood life, is beginning to attract a lot of interest here. And so it's really exciting to be part of this pioneering movement. So our individual goal is to be a prototype for permanently affordable, low impact and environmentally sustainable housing in the Southeast. We want to model a way of living which does not cost the earth, which is going to be some challenge in Sussex, but we are determined to try. So as David said, there are 3 pillars that underlie our vision. And Lucy and Dylan and Sandra are going to sort of talk about this in a bit more depth, but I'll just kind of overview them here. We are aiming to be an ecologically regenerative community, placing great focus on being stewards of the land in which we plan to live, tending to biodiversity and food growing, creating spaces for children and adults alike to enjoy and connect with nature. And we want our stewardship of the land to be a way of connecting with and integrating the project with our local community too. So more from that, Lucy, on that shortly. We want to be socially positive. One of our core values is tending to our relationships with each other. Sandra's going to talk more about the importance of community later and how we see this being nurtured at Heartward. But we are outward looking, we're not just about the community. We want to integrate with the wider local community, as well as plugging into the emerging national co-housing network and beyond. And as much as we place value on eco-diversity, we value human diversity as a strength and enrichment of a community. So we want to do more to ensure that everyone feels welcome. And we're beginning to reach out to minority communities to start conversations about how we can be more inclusive. The third pillar is that of financial sustainability. So we believe that a house is not about making or losing money, that it's a basic human right for us and for future generations. And investment in community supports the family and the individual. So financial affordability in perpetuity is also part of our commitment to diversity. And it underlies our commitment to the mutual home ownership society model, which is a new concept in cooperative societies. It's designed as an alternative to conventional home ownership. And I'm not going to talk about that any more than that. Dylan is going to take that one and run. So that's sort of in the nutshell our kind of 3 pillars. And how are we going about making that a reality? Well, I want to just flag up again, Peter, our partner, is Co-Production Housing, which is a community housing solution provider. And they've been working with us for several years in different iterations of their own. And Peter will talk a bit more about how they're helping us specifically with land finding as well a little later on. So yeah, with their guidance, we've been working hard for several years to create the structures that form the bedrock of what we hope will be a successful project. And in the last year, maybe, David, could you change to the One Planet Living, thank you, slide. We have, Peter's taken us through a process of adopting the One Planet Living sustainability framework, which is developed in part by the WWF as a means of making our vision sort of more concretely actionable. This model there's loads about this model. You can go and Google it online, and I don't want to take up any more time because it'll take 90 minutes just to go through them. But their idea is that sustainability frameworks can typically tend to concentrate on architecture and construction, but this model also integrates lifestyle choices, public health, transit options, and so on. So I don't know if you can see, it's very small, but there are 10 principles of One Planet Living. And we're using those to structure our project actions and outcomes. So I'm not going to go through them all in great detail because I think this is something that we would like to come back to and do in more depth another time. But as you'll see, it covers eco-build materials, zero energy, sustainable water, transport, local economy and nature, as well as the health and the happiness of the residents. So having this structure and framework means we can think about all aspects of our community and what it means to live sustainably. And it also keeps us accountable and anchors our dream into a sort of actionable reality. So yeah, like I said, we'll come back to that another time. Okay, onto the timeline, which Sandra has beautifully created. Again, it might be super small. I think we're probably going to send out this presentation maybe in a hard copy on the email. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. I'm just going to sort of whiz through it a little bit, but I thought maybe this would be a point for me to sort of introduce myself a bit, because Lucy and I are the kind of remaining co-founders of Heartward, and so it's sort of, yeah, feels like the right time to say hello and a bit about me. I'm a psychotherapist, and you can see it clearly, Peter. Thank you for letting me know. So I personally value the creation of caring and safe spaces to foster a sense of belonging. I was introduced to the idea of you can hear my daughter. I was introduced to the idea of co-housing while I briefly lived and visited some intentional communities in Esselen and Findhorn. And Esselen is in fact where I first learned about co-housing. And I was prompted to explore joining, or it turned out to be actually co-creating an intentional community with the birth of my daughter, when I could really feel the lack of community around me. So I want to parent in community. I want my daughter to grow up in a more interconnected world. And for me personally, I think Heartward is my way of being of service to a planet that is struggling with unsustainable and broken systems. So co-creating a community that is match fit for the 21st century and the challenges we face is helping me stay anchored in the world right now. So yeah, Lucy and I, we're the original co-founders. We met through a friend actually, but we both originally met at an event held by Peter and the CPH team, who were hosting kind of chemistry meetings back in 2017 to bring together people in Sussex who are interested in community living. We signed up to his organisation's programme by the end of 2017 with a third household, and spent a couple of years working on our vision. Spent a long time processing through all these different aspects of what community living would be like, agreed a financial model, wrote and completed a business plan, adopted sociocracy as our consent-based decision-making process, started to visit some sites. In 2020, we had our first of these outreach meetings. In fact, we've only had one other before. This is our second. And then we went into lockdown about 2 months later. And it was an interesting time for our project because it kind of gave us a bit of a gift, because we spent a lot of time online, just coming together, and it was a really anchoring place to come to in the middle of COVID. And at the same time, we needed to grow. We were down to 3 people, and we needed to get more people on board. One of those people was heading to Portugal. So we expanded the working group with these energetic new recruits. And we worked on the membership process. We got clearer on the finances. We went line by line through the legal structure. We worked up our design brief. We had conversations about diversity. We met with planners, eco-architects, housing developers, green building system professionals, and we talked to parish and district councils, did further site visits. We've been busy, basically. Last year, we sort of formalised our membership process, and 3 more households joined Heartward. Dylan, Lisa and David and Sandra, although David and Sandra have been involved for quite a few years by then. And we reiterated our agreement to work with Peter and CPH under the OPL principles. So this year we've, where are we now, September, we've been focusing quite a lot on land finding, working up to this outreach meeting with you guys, which is the start of a conversation about increasing our membership, and we've been developing our investment pitch, and that's our next steps really: land finding, We need to raise funds for the build and purchase of the land, and we also need to recruit new Heartward members, which Elisa will come to later. So that was a whistle-stop tour through Heartward, according to me. And now I'm going to hand over to Lucy, who will take us through our commitment to ecological regeneration.
Thanks, Sarah. Lucy needs.
Yeah,
Sarah,
just
you
coming
need-
off mute. Thanks for the whistle stop tour, Sarah. That's great to hear the potted history. I hadn't heard that section, so that's really lovely. So it could put me in the mood. And hello, everyone. My name's Lucy, and I'm a co-founder. And so yeah, it's been 5 years since we've been doing this. So a lot of meetings have happened, and my focus has always been land, love of land. Particularly because I've been a bit of a nomad in my time traveling abroad, and then actually did settle down in South America and in Europe, in Amsterdam for a few years. But over the time, I've really, permaculture has been the thing that's attracted me, and I've become quite specialized in particularly food production, and taught quite a lot of workshops on different regenerative practices, particularly for soil. So as I said, I'm settled in Forest Row, and I'm invested in a land project, which is a community, it's a CSA, it's a community supported agriculture. And it's been an amazing opportunity to actually be in one place for 9 years to observe this local project, which is year on year really got to grips with some of the best growing practices. And interestingly, the last 3 years and in lockdown, it became a community-run project for 14 families, and it has been so enriching to have the human element in the context of growing. And I've learned a lot, and I'm so excited about the possibilities of really like co-creating something that's going to allow us to really have food as part of our central theme, to make sure that we stay sustained and healthy in a landscape which has got diminishing quality of soil and water and erosion globally. So and I see so many possibilities with that, and ways to collaborate, and we discussed some of these at length, but there's many more to come from all of you. So we're just at sort of tip of the iceberg with it. But the idea is that we would produce something like 30 to 40% of our own organic food. And if it was a smaller site, that would be quite a significant area of the site. So something like a quarter even of the site, up to a third. And it would include things like polytunnels to extend the growing season. And then if it's a larger piece of land, then we really can open it up to the idea of large animals such as goats and things like beekeeping and hens, and all that kind of possibilities, as well as things like that are more like grey water management systems as well, to deal with our own waste on site, which would be really an important contribution long term. And the site itself, we hope, will be large enough to include secluded and screened off areas, so we can really take the time to have those moments of self-connection and connect with the perhaps wilder areas. And one of the most enduring and inspiring ideas we've had is that we really want a sauna and plunge pool. This has always got us really excited in times where it's all become a bit, this idea that yes, we're gonna, but we might have to dig it ourselves. This is, it's going to be a sort of quite a luxurious item, but we're really quite all keen to make that happen. And then, within those sort of wild areas, this idea that there would be spaces to celebrate changes of the season, and yeah, just sort of more peaceful zones. And part of the ethos is also to support other species on the lands. So there are exciting ways that we can do to support this. One is to try and enhance this enhances biodiversity, so we can attract pollinators, bees, bats, insects, and create nesting sites. And having a water body would be a key part to support this. And within going sort of expanding out from there, you know, this notion that the site is our home, but it's also linked to a bigger landscape and to the homes of other creatures. So it means that we, you know, it makes sense to actively seek collaboration with neighbours to increase the health of the landscape. And I'm sure some of you are aware that in the UK we've seen a massive plummet in wildlife due to loss of habitat. So the creation of wildlife corridors is a really powerful way to connect with other property owners, and it's becoming, you know, across the country, it's a sort of recognised action where you can really bring back some of those the biodiversity loss that's been happening. As we've said, we're really interested in reaching the wider community, and so that, you know, that we're outward looking, and land is a wonderful way to do this. So we envisage working with local land interested groups and volunteers to support building skills and you know, people in our local town or village, you know, trying to find ways to deal with social isolation. So like, you know, having simple projects like you know, people running local community coming and running their own chicken co-op schemes, so that they can kind of, you know, people who are socially isolated can then come there and build friendships and have opportunities to work together. So that's sort of reaching out to the wider community. And of course there's the councils as well, which we need to consider in their environmental initiatives is really important to for you know, for environmental issues in themselves, but also the planning applications look favourably if we're going to be seen to promote our projects to the wider community, as well as, you know, helping species on site. Yeah, and we're also very sensitive to the fact that a lot of people, or some people, might not be able to physically do the work on the land, but there will be a system of ways to exchange time and effort and contribution, so you'll still be able to enjoy the fruits of growing on the land and the other land projects. Something that we can touch upon, which is ecological, not specifically land related, is carpooling, and that's an example of how, you know, councils will consider planning applications more favourably. For members, it will mean the possibility of only having between 8 and 10 cars for, say, 20 households. So it's potentially a big leap for those who are currently dependent on cars for work or school runs, but we hope it will be simplified if we live near a mainline station. Yeah, so yeah, and other ecological aspects which we'll touch upon as well later on is the buildings themselves will be well insulated and have good ventilation, and this is part of the drive towards decreasing our energy use. And I think a lot of us are starting to feel the real pinch of, you know, the energy security and the stress of prices. So we really want to try and avoid these potential stresses as a community, which means working towards off-grid. So there will be, we're going to be in talks about how to create, when we do the original build and design, there will be aspects of future-proofing and setting up a funding stream from the community to enable increasingly going towards off-grid. So yeah, so there's a lot of ideas and a lot to implement, and yeah, at the end of the day, and it is a lot of work, and yeah, there's a lot of maintenance and tweaking that needs, and the reality is we're looking for creative people, but also we need to have enough physically able members who can really commit on a regular basis. And there's, you know, something my local project has really shown me that, you know, there's always a wealth of ideas and enthusiasm, but commitment and hands on the soil requires real steadfast energy to make our dreams a reality. So yes, I'm really excited to be part of this stage and see what the feedback's going to be, and how people are connected to land. So yes, that's one of our pillars.
Thank you, Lucy. That was great. Thank you. The next person is going to talk a little bit about what this could look like. So, Elisa Della Vedova, would you like to introduce yourself? And when you're ready, I'll go back to the screen share.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Elisa. I'm Italian. I lived abroad in Europe, and then now I'm here in UK. In here I became mom of 2 children, And also for me, so I realized that it takes really a village to raise a child, and that's my main motivation of why co-housing, as also Sarah said. I think we are very much aligned into that. I have a background in business and also in Montessori education. I'm a Montessori teacher. I'm now studying also to become an integrative counselor. And I'm very much social, and this is my way to put my skills for creating a community. And what I'm talking here today is more from the design point of view, what it means to bring out all of these principles that we have been talking about into what could it look like from a design point of view. Maybe David, you could put the slide. Yeah, like the next one, I think. Yes, is this. So in this slide, it's just ideas of how and what that could look like. What we did was to have a survey in between all of us, and decide, which kind of social spaces we would benefit as a community. Also to remember that our individual homes could be smaller, in order that to make more use of communal spaces. Things like for instance, the common house where we could share meals together on a regular basis, which is not something mandatory, but something that we would like to encourage. The frequency is still yet to decide, obviously, but to have this space. Or even it came the idea to have in there some guest room, so that we could rotate and share. Or maybe also some workshop spaces or creative studio or co-working spaces, offices or something like that. It came as something that we could like to have together. But that includes also maybe thinking about share facilities like laundry that we could share, or a tool shed, or a bike shed, storage spaces like area for food, to keep food, or space for children to be there and to enjoy. And these are all suggestions that we would like to have. And we mentioned already the sauna and hot tub as a place that for us has been always some important, like, oh, well, we would all love that. But maybe also all of us said like, oh, well, a pizza oven and barbecue area, that would be nice, or a fire pit and a circle. Well, we could gather as well in there. Then, as we mentioned, some of us mentioned before, we always think about the wider community and how we can offer also these common house to possibly members from the wider local community, and maybe share therefore some spaces with them that they might having multi-purpose spaces like a yoga studio, for instance, or providing some therapy or workshop space that we can offer to other people from the outside community. And yeah, I think these are all the main idea that we wanted to include in our project. And as Lucy mentioned, well, and in here there's the car charger and the group parking, because yes, we are aware that sharing cars and therefore possibly reducing the spaces for a parking would be so much, have such a benefit, benefit for all of us, because instead we could use that space for something else way more enjoyable. So I think that's from my side.
Thank you, Elisa. I'm just going to stop the share and come back to the main screen here. And Sandra, if you would like to unmute yourself, and you could perhaps tell us a little bit about what it might feel like.
I'll introduce, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll just introduce myself for a moment. So I'm a writer, both fiction, memoir, a mix of both. I also teach writing. And before this, I've had a gazillion jobs in passions, including in design and photography, martial arts, a few other things. But I have lived with a chronic illness for over 25 years, which really informs how I am in the world more and more. I was born in South Africa, but I left when I was quite young. But in fact, I've been seeking community, home, really, for decades. And I've lived in a variety of different living situations in multiple countries, including, actually, David and I both, we lived in Australia on a piece of land where there were 4 different separate households sharing resources and nurturing the land. It was very, sort of a very relaxed living situation. It was quite wonderful. Not for too long, unfortunately. I've also been involved in community building in different areas, co-housing. I've founded and moderated a successful online community for many years. And the same for a charitable organization for animal rescue in Bosnia, Herzegovina, entirely run by volunteers. So that is really a kind of community, and it teaches you a lot about being with people. Anyway, I'm going to talk a bit about 2 of the One Planet living principles, health and happiness, which they list as encouraging active, social, meaningful lives to promote good health and well-being, and culture and community, which the One Planet Living describes as nurturing local identity and heritage, empowering communities, and promoting a culture of sustainable living. I'm probably going to be talking about health and happiness for the most part. I think it's well known that loneliness and social isolation are factors of the greatest psychological impact on people's health. You have greater risk of dementia, depression, anxiety, premature death even. That's on one website that I read. I think also perhaps we will realize this through the pandemic, the toll of which has highlighted the importance of togetherness. And studies show that more than 1/3 of adults actually feel lonely. And it's important to remember that this can be regardless of the amount of social contact. So you can still feel lonely even if you have a so-called community or not socially isolated. So we really need community, and one in which we don't feel lonely. So community is a bit of a buzzword. What does it mean? It's a group of people with something in common or overlapping interests, working together towards a shared goal, a group of people who have a shared sense of trust, connection, and caring for one another. And it's this that really creates the sense of belonging. And it's important to foster a safe environment so we can have vulnerable and difficult conversations. So it's a community where open dialogue is safe and encouraged, where people can deepen their understanding of each other and work to address any challenges and to find support. And these are really sort of vital factors in creating a resilient community, one that lasts. So how are we specifically in Heartward going to nourish our community and our relationships? It is going to be built into the way we actually design the community. So on a very basic fact, building healthy homes in terms of the actual materials with which they're built. But the way they will be designed in terms of the relationship to each other, and a large common house, which has already been mentioned, for occasional shared meals, activities, workshops, meditations. In the image there, you'll see top left, there's a beautiful example of such a building. I'm not sure that we'll manage to do that. It's got a grass roof and everything, but maybe we'll be able to build something beautiful. We certainly aim to do so. And note the sauna bottom right with the pond, which for some reason has been the kind of guiding note for many of us. and of course, we'll, nourish the community by sharing in the tending of gardens and growing food, by our decision-making model sociocracy that you'll hear more about from David, and the conflict resolution policies we've been working on. And as has been mentioned, we hope to celebrate together at seasonal moments. But what's important is that we find ways to contribute that use our unique gifts and life experience, so that, and nothing, you don't have to do anything. So for example, with my illness, I can't do a lot of gardening or digging and so on, but I have other skills. And inclusivity is a critical factor in Heartward, including, as Lucy and Elisa have already mentioned, building connections with the local community around us, and also building connections with the worldwide co-housing communities. And there's something that's really important for me, which I was always concerned about from the start, is that there's private space, there's time and space. I'm a sort of extroverted introvert, and I think that is also, we need that. So perhaps some of the houses or apartments will have little private areas to be in, but it's we are going to be living separately. It's not all in one house. But I guess ultimately, in the context of the current social and planetary instability, a close, cohesive and resilient community with a shared vision feels really critical. And we at Heartward hope to be a model for how the world might be a different way of living, which, as Sarah said, does not cost the earth and instead nourishes sustainable health and well-being for all of us, and hopefully for others too. And I think that's my spiel. I mean, in the image, you'll see, people celebrating around a fire, meals, gardening, and yeah, I think that's me in the forest with a hat on, although she looks a bit younger than me. That's me.
Thanks, Sandra. It's lovely. My name is David, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the governance. I was born in Canada, and I really have traveled a great deal through my life for work. And I'm a therapist, a counselor, and a teacher. And my interest has always been in the health and welfare of not only individuals, but also of communities. So the work that I've done is not just as one-on-one therapy, but also with the health of communities, working with businesses and different kinds of organizations. I have a very kind of checkered past. I worked in the theater a long time ago, and one of the things that I learned there was, how you develop relationships very, very quickly, and being in a play that is working on all levels has to do with the relationships with people, and those discoveries set me on, basically, in terms of the kind of work that I now do. I'm just going to share the screen here and talk a little bit about how Heartward is going to use sociocracy as a form of, it's a dynamic self-governance, or just simply a dynamic governance that seeks to create psychologically safe environments and productive organizations. What is so unique about the sociocratic approach is that it draws on the use of consent rather than majority voting. So in discussion and decision-making by people, there's a shared goal or a work process. And consent is not consensus, where consensus requires 100% agreement. And in the consent process, sociocracy, that's not necessary. And neither do you have what we've seen democratically in the last while, where a majority decision is foisted on a sometimes sizable minority. And that's certainly what happened with Brexit, for instance. The sociocracy is non-hierarchical, as you can see on the slide here. It's a schematic of circles. So that's the organizing principles, is that there's a series of interlinking circles. So each circle, or task group, if you like, takes care of specific tasks or values. And all these circles are connected with each other through a feedback link. And this means that there is representation from more than one perspective and a mutual control and share of power. It basically is an antidote for any kind of strict hierarchy or a dictatorship that might develop, simply because no individual can gain control of a decision-making process or even control the input from each circle. Sociocracy has a very clear decision-making process which allows for a full scope of ideas and objections and concerns to be expressed. It's particularly useful in discovering what may not be readily apparent, either a cost or a benefit. So without going into too much detail, these circles will deal with operations, i.e. everyday concerns. And if there is a need for a policy change, then that requires input from a circle that has been elected by consent, that can make the policy decisions. That way, everybody has a guideline, and there are guiding principles as to how we can operate together, in particular when it comes to decisions that need to be made. So to sum up, there are four basic principles associated with sociocracy. One is that it's a decision by consent, and there's a very specific way of going through that, which I won't go into here. The organization is through teams or circles, and that there is this principle of double linking, which creates a feedback between the circles. So that communication happens in both directions, not just in the hierarchical where it's a one-way thing. And the other final one is that the election is by consent. In terms of governance, the only other thing to say is that we are developing a policy to deal with should there be a difficulty that arises where two households are unable to come to an agreement on something, that there will be a mediation process so that these things can be equitably resolved. I think I've said enough on that. And I'm now going to pass over to Dylan to introduce himself and also talk a little bit about the financial aspects.
Thank you, David. Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm the Heartward treasurer. My household includes my partner and two small girls. I've lived in Sussex for 20 years, currently in Kingston near Lewes. I work as a counsellor and somatic experiencing practitioner, but perhaps more relevant to my role as treasurer is that I founded my own business in my late 20s, which I ran for 15 years. So I'm going to talk about the dreaded subject of money, but hopefully in a way that isn't too depressing or heavy. And my reference point for this is a quote from the great Werner Herzog, who once said, I'm going to not attempt a German accent, if your project has substance, then the money will follow like a common cur in the street with its tail between its legs. And I think what he might mean by substance is a combination of an inspiring vision, a practical plan to execute it, and a team of people who are willing and able to put their efforts in to make it happen. My motivation for being involved in Heartward, apart from wanting my family to live in a community rather than just a house, is a belief in social justice and human diversity. We need to do something about the impossible cost of living in this country, which has been largely driven by our national obsession with making money from housing. With Heartward, we want to make our homes an investment in community rather than in property. The first element of this is called the Mutual Home Ownership Society. It's a fairly new model. It was first proposed by the New Economics Foundation and CDS cooperatives, and it's been created to finance community-led housing. The EMOS is a way for a community group to club together to finance a large project. I'm going to explain this square in a moment, but just in more general terms, the EMOS owns the homes and the land rather than the individual members. The EMOS is owned and managed by its members who live in the homes it provides. Each member has a lease, which gives the right to occupy a specified property, and the membership of the EMOS gives members democratic control of their housing. The cost of building the homes owned by the EMOS is financed by a long-term mortgage loan. So just to explain, there's a lot of complexity to this, but I think this simple diagram kind of gives you a sense of how it works. If we look at this big square, green and yellow, it represents the entire project and all of its financial costs. So the society as a whole will need probably a 20% deposit to get a mortgage. But if some households have more than 20% deposit to put in, then others could put in less. So we're saying that a minimum 10% deposit. As a household, what you're buying is not your house, but a share of the EMOS equivalent to the size of your property. So if the entire project costs, let's say, 6 million, including the land and all buildings, and there are 20 households involved, then the average household would be buying a £300,000 slice. And you can see that if you look at the horizontal lines indicate slices of varying thicknesses. A larger property which has a thicker slice would mean a larger investment, and smaller properties would mean buying less. Those people with higher income could buy their shares more quickly, which would put more money into the whole project, and those with lower income could pay off more slowly. We could also agree that wealthier families invest an extra 10%, while the rest, while less well off, buy 10% less. There's also an element of service charge and a contribution in the early years to build up a fund that can be used to buy people out as they leave. So let's say if you bought into Heartward and after a few years living there, you decided to leave for whatever reason. The principle is that the society would buy your shares back from you, probably with some increase in their value. And we plan to link the value of Heartward shares, the value of Heartward to average local wages, which means that it remains at the same level of affordability forever. You could also pass on your shares to your children or their relatives or to anyone. They wouldn't automatically have the right to live in Heartward. They could apply to do so, but they would have the right to the value of the equity shares. So we think it's a great model to use since it makes a compromise between people's natural wish to invest in their own home. It's an important part of co-housing that you have your own space that you can live in and privacy there, as well as the need to invest in community. But what about people who can't afford this? We must be honest, we're trying to build in one of the most expensive places in Europe, and we're building expensively with high ecological values and build standards. Not everyone is going to be able to find 30k plus for a deposit. So we're going to establish a community share offer. This makes it more possible for people who can't buy in to be part of Heartward. So we might imagine a local young person who's just getting started in the world of work and wants to leave home. Would we be able to help them? Our community share offer will offer ethical investors the opportunity to build rental properties within Heartward, which will then be rented out at genuinely affordable levels forever. So, for example, we might build a studio flat for £75,000 to £85,000, which would be paid for by the ethical investor and rented out to a local young person for, say, £450 a month. They'd have their own space, they'd have full use of the shared community house, the land, and all the other facilities, and they'd be full members of the community. The only thing they wouldn't be a member of is the EMOS. The Mutual Home Ownership Society. And we might imagine that young person doing an apprenticeship in market gardening or permaculture or mushroom growing, learning a skill hands-on that they could use within the community and beyond. The investor, meanwhile, gets their money back plus some interest over 20 years and will gain the satisfaction of knowing that their money's done some good in the world. And at the end of that period, the flat is then fully owned by the EMOS, by Heartward, and it continues to be rented out at affordable rates. And we could do the same thing with larger properties, but I really like this as an illustration of how Heartward can meet someone's basic needs, and hopefully much more than those basic needs. So that's about all from me. If you know anyone who'd be interested in this kind of investment or in contributing to supporting Heartward in other ways, then please do put them in touch with me or with one of the other members. So thank you, David.
Thank you. I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you, Dylan. I'm impressed by how everybody has been very succinct and coming through. Really appreciate it. I am now going to introduce, or Peter will introduce himself, Peter Burke from Co-Housing Production, Co-Production Housing. And Peter, if you'd like to pop up and say hello, and you can talk a little bit about co-production housing and about the land finding and where we are at the moment. I'd appreciate it.
Okay,
So,
hello everyone. I've been sort of sitting here trying to pretend that I didn't know anything, even though I've been with this group for 5 or 6 years, but been very impressed with the kind of simplicity of how a lot of it's been presented. And you know, at the end of the day, we're talking about a very complex kind of project, and it's very important to kind of see it from the point of view as housing isn't simple. It's never been simple. So my background is commercial finance. I've also run my own social enterprises and been involved in charities and some corporates along the way. About 6.5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to kind of break away from commercial finance. I'd peeked behind the curtain for too long of kind of profit-driven house builders and property developers. And whilst I'd kind of seen, you know, what their intentions were, it was, you know, it was to build houses, to build their product, to sell them. But what I always saw was the kind of the cutting of quality or kind of efficiency, just to kind of make sure that there was always that profit there. And I basically thought there was a better way, a fairer way. So we did set up our project, our vision project, which myself and Nathaniel Whitestone, who lives in Sussex, we set a fairer society up basically to kind of create choice in the housing market. And our kind of vision and aim for housing was better places to live. Over the years and the time that we've worked with the kind of founder members and through the different stages, it was always under the sort of guise of community-led housing, which, you know, is kind of become quite a big thing in the UK and in different formats, co-housing being one of them, self-build, cooperatives and community land trusts. But what we kind of felt, and, you know, I'm very proud to sort of see how Heartward has grown. But I'm also kind of proud that Heartward stuck with us, because over the time we've had to change the way things have gone, and the way we've done things, mainly to survive, but more so to make sure that there was a better chance for more of these projects to kind of proceed. Because at the end of the day, you know, Heartward members and everybody involved has got a job, a family, got other interests other than house building. So it was also through lockdown, we kind of revisited, you know, what we do and how we do it. And we had been to a seminar, which was community housing based, but there was a presentation around co-production, which is, you know, heavily used in the kind of health and social services sector. And simply it's about where people are bringing together the people who need the service, the community at large, and professionals who are experts in doing this job day to day. So we tried to kind of reinvent that for housing and community-led housing, in terms of co-production housing really is the kind of lead development partner, which enables the sort of day-to-day work to keep moving ahead. but also for the community to focus on community. And I think you can probably see from the presentation, there's a lot of time, energy, and thinking and desire and ideas that goes into community. And I think that's the most important part of this project, is that it's trying to create a community. So really what we've tried to do over the sort of course of the last year really is take over the sort of heavy lifting. We've sort of developed different sort of contacts in and around land finding. We put together some ideas. We tried a few things that didn't work, but we found a land finding company who kind of helped us identify specific land for Heartwood. So they talked about their design brief and what they want to create, which obviously means you've got to try and find a piece of land that fits that brief. So we've done that over the course of the last 6 months, I suppose. We've identified a lot of mainly greenfield land. So it's kind of virgin land, which, most people in the communities will probably, to sort of coin the phrase of NIMBYism, will probably object to, because it's greenfield land. But at the end of the day, we've got a housing crisis, and planners will be sort of sympathetic and see the need for housing supply in their area. So basically what we've been doing over the past 3 months is putting forward very specific pieces of land to the group who've been saying yes or no based on location. This one that's being shown at the moment in the East Grinstead area has become a kind of favourite for a lot of reasons. We've actually got a meeting tomorrow with the landowner. But I think that the key thing is that there is land out there, and the most positive thing working with planning consultants over the course of the last couple of months is this whole approach to house building is definitely seen as something as a positive. There's key policy things that even is above my head in terms of a lot of this stuff, but stuff that I'm learning that we have to be very careful on and very clear on in terms of policy. We won't just be given planning permission to build 20 houses in a beautiful part of Sussex just because we're trying to do the right thing. So the main thing is that what we've been trying to do most importantly is really push and be clear on the sustainability side of things, financial and affordability side of things, because housing above and beyond planning has become very political in the last 5 to 10 years. So now councils are kind of being made to look at sustainability as a key part of making decisions around planning permission. So I'm at this stage very positive in terms of that we will find land. Whether it's this piece of land or not is not, the decision we can make today. But I think there is a steady stream of probably 4 to 5 kind of really interesting pieces of land that keep coming up every month. We're paying for this service. We're working with these people kind of on a professional basis. They have to make their money, but obviously the benefit of getting land at this stage means that the affordability of it is reduced because there's no planning permission on it. So there's a real chance to kind of shape this community using policy and sustainability in One Planet Living. And yeah, we're very excited to kind of be working with Heartwood on this. We also kind of focus a lot on the investment side of things. So obviously my background in finance, it really is, it's possible to kind of raise the money needed to develop this type of housing. And yeah, I think mainly in terms of the next steps is really the focus in terms of this meeting is that we hope that land is quite imminent. So yeah, that's about all.
Thank you, Peter. Really appreciate that. Appreciate you coming here this evening. And I know there's been probably a lot of information in here, but if you can just bear with us for a few more minutes, then Elisa can just give us a short outline of what next steps could be. Elisa, if you'd like to unmute.
Yeah.
If you're ready for that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, I am unmuted. Yeah, so what's next? As also Peter was saying, and all of us, as a project, as Heartward project, we now need to find the land, and with the land also the design, the specific design of how we want it. Then we have to find the investment to be able to do it, and new members. To become a new member, there's a specific membership process, but I want to talk more specifically for tonight about which kind of next step we can offer to you at this point after this meeting. So, well, soon we could, there will be another interactive or much more probably fun meeting for everyone to get to know each other a bit more and to see if we are a good match, and also to answer any further question, which I'm sure a lot of you have, you know, for which kind of is your interest, or your concern, confusion, and all of that. Then if you choose to stay informed and you want to meet us more of on a regular basis, it can be in person or Zoom. We offer more meeting to learn, for you to learn more about the financial model, the MHOS, and also about the sociocracy and the principle, which we only touch briefly. And for that, we would like to, we are going to ask for a nominal monthly donation of £5. And this will help us to, they will go towards cover the fees and obviously towards the cost of developing the project. Then you can also just decide that you aren't interested to join as a member, but you still want to support what we are going to do, and you still would like to offer so the monthly donation, which for us would be great. And after that, if you really decide that you want to become an active member of Heartward, and we also feel that we are a good match, then we can start the membership process that includes going in more details in your household and your needs and the financial contribution. So these are the options for now, and I guess we are gonna open now the question and answer for all of you, and also, you know, if you need me to repeat or any of the things that we said.
Thank you, Elisa. So there are probably more things for the team to add, but what I would like to just do is just take a breath and thank you for listening. Thank you for taking all of this in. I appreciate it. And I also recognize that it's Monday evening and it's late. So thank you for still being with us. If you do have a question, we do actually have some time, then we would welcome you. You can either put up your hand, or if you go to the bottom of the screen, you will see something called reactions. And if you click on that, you will see hand gestures available that you can put up your hand to speak. And I will not do a screen share at the moment, because then if anybody does have a question, I won't be able to see you. The other way, if your camera is turned off and you don't wish to be seen at this time, you can use the chat and just make sure that the chat goes to everybody. and you can ask your question there. Or make a comment, we're open for that. So it's open to the floor now.
May I ask a question?
Yes, certainly, Madeline.
Kick it off. Thank you. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Trying to absorb it all here. Okay, just made a few notes. So going back to the beginning, you did mention, obviously, in terms of keeping us warm there, if we were there, insulation. Could you speak a bit more about what forms of energy you would look to using, as well as solar power, heat pumps, all this kind of thing? What would you look towards, given that there's so much change at the moment?
I'm not sure who is best to answer that. Lucy, do you want to start? Sandra, I know you've looked at a lot of the design things. Perhaps the two of you together.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of have a stab at that. I think the idea would be that because of although depending on the technologies available, there will be associated costs on, whether they're mass produced and they're really high quality. And if they're affordable for our scheme, we will include them right at the beginning. But as I mentioned, there was an aspect of future proofing. So the idea would be that we would have the infrastructure for those kind of elements to be added along the way through a funding stream that would be set up by the community. But the really obvious things would be in place to be able to hook up later on.
Okay.
But solar, I think we would make the assumption that solar and water heaters, those are more basic things. We would assume that would be part of the original build straight off the bat.
Okay, thank you.
Sandra, did you have anything to add to that from the design point of view?
No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe Peter does.
Yeah, I can add a few things just from the sort of architects and people that have been sort of in and around for the last sort of 5 years. And I think they're interesting. What's come to light most over the more sort of recent is one of the key problems of the houses this country seems to build is they're not airtight. And I think a lot of people then suddenly go, well, if it's not airtight, there's no air and it'll be horrible to live there. But this is where the kind of services that you can add in terms of mechanical kind of ventilation of air coming in and kind of purifying that air. So I think there's kind of really key elements to the design of the buildings, the air tightness that you use, the thermal mass, which you can get from pretty much any product you use these days. And actually by just bringing in those three key elements, you can increase the kind of productivity and kind of insulation of your home by 20 to 30% just by doing that, which kind of beggars belief why other house builders don't do that as the norm. I think the most interesting thing I found recently from a kind of passive house specialist I've been talking to is that it only probably costs 10 to 20% extra in terms of services that you're actually adding to the kind of quality of build. So if you take that over a 20, 30, 40, 50 year kind of process of living in the house and the kind of the longevity of the house, the small increase at the front end of actually putting that onto the build pays for itself 3-4 times over in terms of the lifetime of the building. So I think it's really positive at the moment, especially with everything that's going on, that actually if you just put real kind of care and attention into the build, you can immediately reduce kind of your bills and your energy, adding solar, in the UK, it does work, and it certainly does work to some extent. But yeah, there are other things in terms of air and source heat pumps that really do add a lot of benefit over time in this country. So I think there's a lot of kind of simple solutions. And most importantly is that they're all out there. They're not new anymore. They're being used and have been used throughout the world, and more so in this country now for a long time. They're just not really being adopted quickly enough by house builders.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Sally Boys, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. actually, it's the same, in the same vein, really, in terms of houses. And I'm just wondering, you've mentioned the architects. Are these architects that you've got strong associations with, and are they committed to the project, basically? So that,
Both Peter
you know,
and
there's a
Sandra,
continuity, you know, of that connection.
both Peter and Sandra probably have an answer to this.
I mean, I think the kind of agreement that we had with Heartward when we went into this kind of new phase of our development really was, I think architect and design is very much a personal choice, and we're open to the kind of project choosing who they want. So I think there would be that kind of tendering process where when you get to the point of designing the project, you know, as a group, you would be able to choose who collectively, using sociocracy, of course, as a consent decision-making process, would be able to kind of bring that architect in. I mean, I do have a few architects that I currently work with and have kind of started to be more involved with, but I think it's kind of it's something that's open to the group to use. But I think obviously you would want to use one that has done this kind of work before and therefore has that experience.
Yeah, and over the years, especially in lockdown, we did a number of Zoom meetings with eco-architects and have a sort of list of preferred ones that we would, when the time came, have a closer meeting with, and then, as Peter says, sociocratically decide who we would like to go with.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I don't see anything in the chat, and I don't see any little hands raised. But I'm just going to check. Yes, Vera. Hi, Vera.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm in the middle of feeding a baby. So I won't turn my video on. It'll just look kind of funny. Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed the first half. So, but I think you guys, I think one of the last people to speak touched on this. I was just wondering about like kind of navigating the sort of like political landscape of this, and I know it can be quite tricky. There's the community element, but also, you know, just having local councillors on board. Have you guys engaged with councillors from different parties within the areas where you're looking, and how's that been going to really like sell the concept, which I know a lot of people are sort of confused as to what co-housing even means?
I think several people have answers to this. Lucy has certainly been working on it for a long time. Peter, I know, has, and I think all of us to some degree have. I hand it over to either Lucy or Peter, or both.
Yeah, we've approached local councils who were a lot of letters, a big raft of letters went out, and they were by and large unresponsive. So that's local parish level. And the county council level is slightly different, but they can't, there is a bit of a limitation there because they can't seem to be favouring a project too much. There's a bit of a, they can't seem to be seen to champion a project. And so they sort of tread very sensitively, but green councillors have been really keen to point us to landowners. And so that's the county council, county council level, green councillors. So yeah, parish councils are quite limited in the way they can support a project, and actually what they're more invested in, what we find is that if you have a local CLT or a land-based group that is working specifically with residents from the council itself, the local parish council, then that's their focus, rather than an external group who has a constellation of all sorts of people from Sussex, for example, they look less, you know, they're not, it's not so relevant to them. That's been my experience so far. I hope that makes sense.
Can I also just quickly add in, because we haven't actually found the land, but when we do, there's going to be a very clear, coherent sort of community engagement process, and that will be when we really start to target people more specifically. It's quite hard at the moment. We're sort of, we're a bit looking for a needle in a haystack, so we literally can't cover all the parishes and councillors in Sussex. Yeah.
And I think to add to that, Lucy's right, and it's something I've learned through the planning consultant who's linked with the land finding company, is that councillors have to sit on the fence, kind of, because they want political votes when the kind of election comes round. So if they're seen to kind of back a project that local residents object to, then they might lose votes. So generally, these days, councillors don't make decisions. They do what they call calling it in. So if they're asked to make a decision in their kind of ward or their area, they usually call it into committee, and then the committee make a decision at a planning level. But I think what I touched on before in terms of the political side of it is that councils now, you know, especially if they've kind of said there's a climate emergency, and you know they're kind of following that, kind of hitting targets and sustainability targets. There's this real kind of push within councils to see this type of project kind of succeed, because it's not just going to provide housing, and it's not going to just kind of push up their housing supply. It's also going to help them with their sustainability targets. So I think the most important part is that outward look, kind of community engagement when the land is found, is to kind of connect with local residents, councillors, businesses and people in that area, and kind of not kind of say, this is what we're going to do, whether you like it or not. It's kind of talking to them on a local level also, what their housing need is or their community need is. And I think that kind of full kind of suite of ticking all the boxes will go some way in terms of getting planning permission. But yeah, it's a very good question, and I thought it would be the place to start when I started out, but yeah, it's usually a difficult place to kind of get much action.
Thank you. I have Mary Joy Johnson. Hi. You need to just unmute yourself. If you,
yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. It's really comprehensive, and you've obviously done an awful amount of work, particularly resonating with your sense of governance and community. So really appreciating that. Just really practically, how wide is your search area for land?
Who would like to answer that? I guess I'll start by saying it's Sussex. You know, we are wanting to be a community that's still connected, so people will have, it's not an inward looking, Heartward is not inward looking, so that people will still have jobs, and it's important for us to be able to continue to do that work. That means we're not looking as far afield as it would be cheaper if we perhaps went up to, I don't know, places in maybe northern England or up in Scotland or somewhere. So it's I think we're agreed on, it's basically Sussex or somewhere in there.
We did try for a sort of 15 miles of what's the word?
Radius?
Radius of Lewis. That has been a bit of a pin around which, yeah.
Oh, and one of the things is that we're really trying to do is to find a sufficient amount of land, which is greenfield, which we can use for growing things, but that is not so far away that we can't get that is connected on the transport grid. So in other words, at the very minimum, a good bus service, very minimum, better train stations with trains running, and so that times to get to Brighton or London or wherever are not impossible for people working there. Yeah. Thank you. Does that help you answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else who would like to jump in and make a comment? I see there's one or two things in the chat. Appreciate it. Thank you, Julie. Thanks, Jules. Well, in that case, just while you're thinking about that, I'm going to share the screen for a last little quotation. So it's actually lovely to hear the silence here. And I'm really appreciating your presence and the fact that you've given us this time to listen to us. And I hope we've inspired you a little bit, maybe to want to just be in touch with us. And what we would like to do, if it's possible, is to send you a very short questionnaire, which you're welcome to kind of just give us a little bit of feedback and maybe say some things about what it is that your needs are, and how you might be able to fit in, or what sounds good to you, and or what sounds you're not sure about, things like that. So this is really only the start of a conversation, and I hope we have many more of them. And I hope that ultimately we're going to be having those conversations in our beautiful community house, in our beautiful surrounding area of Heartward community, somewhere in deepest, darkest Sussex, close to a railway line and amenities and all those things that we enjoy and need in a modern life. And part of this connectivity that I want to feel grateful for is not only you, but the fact that we are able to do this via Zoom, which only a few years ago was not possible. And so that's another thing, is that we will be connected. We will be connected in many ways, personal levels, but also in the wider community, hopefully in the world, and share with each other. Thank you. And
Thanks,
if anybody wants to say anything, core team or whoever, please say so.
Feels like we might be kind of pretty much right on the 90 minutes. Is that was that the time we were?
We did say 90 minutes.
We did
That's
say
a first for Heartwood, everyone. That's a first for Heartwood.
Peter, it takes a while, but we're going to get there. Yeah. So thank you for coming, and I guess we'll end the meeting. There was a question as to whether the core team members wanted to stay on for a few minutes. Is that a yes or no? If it's a yes, I will leave this up, and when whoever is wanting to leave the meeting, then it's been a pleasure to be with you and feel your presence, and also your kids and cats I see wandering across screens. Love it. Beautiful. Lovely. Oh, and the ones to come too. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Nice to meet you all online.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Care.
coming.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And
Mireille, I think you've left your.
There's 2 in still.
Yeah,
I can remove.
Yeah.
You can, I think you can stop them, and I'm also stopping the record.
There we go. It's left.
Close. You need to stop the recording.
I do. Hang on. I'm just going to remove the guys that haven't left yet.
Like falling asleep.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
we're still recording to the
Yeah.
people who.
Yeah, I think we can stop the recording now.
Oh, yeah, I can. That's probably better than to do.